Welcome to Throwing 101. This was going to be kind of fun. Clay does not come in 1 pound balls like this. It would be nice if it did, but it comes in 25-pound bags of clay that we cut, wedge, prep, and spank into balls of clay. Now when you get a ball of clay, a lot of times it's going to be in another bag and it'll look like a potato, and what you really want to do is you want to put a ball of clay down on the wheel head. So you kind of have to spank the clay into shape, but it's a light touch and you just kind of use one hand, and all of a sudden you got all those bumps and lumps out and you've got a nice ball of clay. Now what I'm not doing is hitting it with fingertips as such to where it's going to create air pockets or air bubbles, and those air pockets and air bubbles can create an explosion in the kiln, possibly blowing up your pot and everybody else's around. So you take your ball of clay and you place that over there. Why is that? Well, that's because you don't want anything on your wheel head until you get yourself all situated. So the very first thing I need to do is put a bat on the wheel. Now, why do we need a bat? The bat allows us to move the clay from the wheel head to the shelf, the damp box, without touching the piece with our hands. But the bat, short for batten board, is warped on occasion. You can see this one is a little bit. So if you lay it on the pinholes, you can see it just doesn't sit down well. It's just a little flobby, right? It's a little wonky and goes back and forth. So if you just flip it over and it sits right down and it's nice and tight, and that's good. So you want a nice flat bat, and that works well. So then you get a little bit of speed going, all right? So a little bit of speed. Now what kind of speed is there? Well, there's a couple different speeds involved. One is all the way pedal to the metal, and that is disaster speed. You're going this fast, crazy things are gonna happen. On the wheel, to the clay, water, we splashing all over, ratchet it back, 90, 80, 70, 50. But the key here is nice medium speed, and the other most important speed to be aware of is the brake, and that's where you push your foot all the way back. You notice it didn't stop right away. You hit the brake, 1, 2 turns, but it'll eventually stop. So those are the two speeds, disaster speed and brake, and somewhere in the middle you're gonna find a nice medium speed to work the clay. All right, so we got our speed down. So grab a sponge, soak out like 90% of the water, and you want just a little bit of water right there. You just want it damp. By getting it damp, it just allows the clay to stick there a little bit better. So then you take your clay and you take the flat side and you just place with purpose. The reason you're placing with purpose is you really want the clay to stick down. You can see it's got a little bit of stickage to it. Now, if you spank the bottom out here, this is not placing with purpose. You really got to make sure you're placing the clay with purpose so they're sticking down. As long as it sticks, you're good to go. So then we're just going to push the clay down, kind of help it get closer to the middle. How do you know it's in the middle? When you kind of turn your wheel on, you can see biggest chunk of clay is right there in the middle. If it's not, pick it up, spank out the bottom, and put it back together right where it needs to be. So, clay's here. We are set to go. A little bit of water on our hands, a little bit of water on the clay. Now, very first motion is just gently down, and what that does is that also kind of helps solidify the clay's sticking to the bat. You just don't want the clay coming off the bat. I lift my hands up and it's like, holy cow, what's all this stuff? Well, this is slip, and slip is great because slip is water and clay mixed together, and what that does is allow your hands to glide and slide on the clay for a long period of time. All right, so here, we got a little bit of buildup of slip. As you can see, you can just keep going and all the slip will build up, and it gets to be too much sometimes. So if it is too much, feel free to just scrape your hands off, and then you got a little bit less slip, and then that might work out well. All right, so from here, the very next thing you're gonna be doing, centering. Centering is key. Centering is a process in which you are pushing the clay from the outside to the inside, and you're containing every aspect of the clay to push it directly into the middle of the wheel head. You want it as perfectly cylindrical in the wheel head as possible so that it's not dancing and wobbling, because you want your pot round, not dancing and wobbling. All right, so the push comes from the left hand. This is textbook, in which you push with the left palm against the clay. That, you see, is why it has to stick to the bat. And as we push, it starts going up because it's got nowhere else to go but up. And then we cap the rise with our other hand, and between the two hands pushing the clay towards the middle, it gets directly into the center of the wheel head, and then you come off slowly and you've got your clay significantly closer to the middle, than when you first started. So that whole thing about left hand push and right hand cap is key to being able to keep the clay in the center of the wheel head. Now, how can you tell when it's perfectly centered? You lay your hand on the clay, and do you see any visible movement? I see a little bit of wiggling by my fingertips. It needs to be, you lay your hand on it, you see no movement at all. And there's a little bit of movement. So we still got a little bit more work to do. So a little bit more push to the middle, and as I push to the middle, it rises, and as it's rising, I push down, and I get it right in line. And all the clay molecules are better aligned, and you come off slowly, and you've got your clay right smack dab in the center of the wheel head.